Okay, so how can you make your drawing magical? Allow. Awesome, right? How can you make your drawing magical? Really? Can you really make your drawing magical? Can I make something out of nothing? How can I bring an idea from my mind onto a surface and then make it interesting? Now, to shock you, how can you actually use your pencil and then create something that somebody will be willing to pay hundreds of thousands for? That is the thing, and these are some of the things we are going to look at in the course of the study. Now, if you look at the video playing by my right, you will understand and see the precision the artist used, as in how he creates those images and then without fear, without eraser, the way he held his pencil and how he makes those effects, the shadings, the precision with all, with ease. So how can you make your own drawing this magical? How can you do something that everybody will see and say, wow, you can use it and see some of your friends, man, look at what I did, bad. And then they will hail you, man, this guy, you are good. So how can you make your drawing magical? This and even more are some of the things we are going to look at in the course of the study. Now, if you're ready, just like as I'm ready, let's get started. Okay. Now, we are going to look at drawings, shape, and composition. That's the part 2 of the drawing. We've talked about the part 1. We've defined what drawing is. We've talked about the functions of drawing. We've talked about steps to consider before, during, and while drawing. We've talked about the mechanisms of drawing. Now, in the course of the study today, now we are going to look at this other objective, and then we'll move it from there. The objective of today's class. Now, number 1, what are the types of drawing? Now, the types of drawing will lead into creating a magical drawing. Number 2, life drawing or drawing from human figure. What exactly is that? We are going to look at the anatomy of human body, both in drawing and in painting. We are going to look at the points to note in figure drawing. Now, we are also going to look at the difference between a male and a female form. They are not the same. Somebody will say the male is like square or block, while the female, they are like triangle, or round. So you understand, that is somebody's own interpretation of a female. Now, in the course of the study, we are going to look at the difference between the male form and the female forms. We are going to move further to looking at the features of a child's body or children's body. We are going to break them down to look at the features of a child's, and then we are still also going to look at what the features of the old people's body. So all this that we are going to cover in the course of the study. So if you're excited like me, come on now, get your drawing materials and then get your seats fixed tight, and then let's dive into the class and have fun. Okay. Now, what are the types of drawing? Now, there are different types of drawing, and this include life drawing, which is also known as the figure drawing. We also have the natural or the nature drawing. Then we still have the still life drawing. We have imaginative composition or imaginative drawing. Then we have general drawing. And finally, we have the outdoor drawing. Now, this outdoor drawing includes both your seascape and your landscape. And don't forget, we have the final one, which is known as what? The abstract drawing. Now, we might be able to cover all in this section, or better still, we'll just concentrate on some of them and then cover the rest in the next section. But any which way, let's enjoy what we have for now. Okay, so having said that, let's look at life drawing or figure drawing. Now, what is life drawing or what is figure drawing? Now, this is the use of lines to show forms of human being in any given composition. It is the use of lines to show the forms of human being in any given composition. Now, figure drawing can be a drawing of a human being in full, or it could be in quarter form, or it can actually be in profile. Now, what do I mean by drawing in profile? Is drawing you sideways, like you're seeing my side. Now, this is exactly what that is, profile drawing. Now, the Egyptians, they are known for that. Eventually, all their figures and all their images are on profile or in profile view. So that are some of the things we are going to look at. Why are their drawings like that? And you can actually draw some drawings, to create variety. Now, the next thing we're going to look at as in some of the definitions of drawings, is that the head has its own drawing structure too, you know, depending on its what position. Now, depending on the position of the head, it depends on how you will draw the head. If I'm keeping my head upward, it has a different concept. If I'm keeping it downward, if I'm on the profile view, if I'm like this, all of that, they have their own effects and what they do with regards to the drawing. Okay. Now, in life drawing, models should be simply dressed so as to enhance detailed drawings of the different intricate forms on the figure. We're advised to draw a human being in as much as most times you can draw them clothed. Yes, that is if you're making a portrait, but to make it interesting, you know, and fun, you draw them, you know, kind of semi-nude or semi-naked, like they dress men wearing singlets and looking simple. Now, for the female model, they should wear skirts with short sleeveless blouse. You know, some of them, sometimes they can either wear slippers or you draw them barefooted. Or while if you're drawing a male figure, you draw them wearing short, wearing singlets or bare-chested. You know, you draw them without any clothes, with or without slippers. These are the ways you can actually draw a figure. All right. So looking at this image, you see exactly what we are trying to explain. Now the lady is feeling complete. Now she's wearing a sleeveless gown, you know, so that you can see the anatomy of the back. You see the backbone, how the spinal cord moved down. You see she's barefooted. Now that's a perfect example of of an outstanding female model. Makes it look very interesting. I can pay any amount for that to get that in my bedroom. All right. So those are the things you consider while drawing. In life drawing, model, okay, we've talked about this. And then for drawing a man, you can actually draw the man. Like I told us, you can draw him bare-chested, you can draw him wearing pants, you can draw him nude, you know, if you've trained yourself to that extent, you know, of drawing images like that. Or better still, you can get somebody to pose for you and then you get this thing drew. So, but these are perfect position or perfect posture to draw. For the lady, you can tell them to sit down, you know, back you, use their clothes to cover some parts of the body so you get the dribbling of the clothes. It makes the work look very interesting. So these are just, you know, some perfect examples of how to posture an image for drawing. All right, now let's consider. Now the following are the stick posture that can be used to practice figure drawing. So if you want to learn figure drawing, now this stick posture, you can actually use them to practice over and over and over again to know how to position, you know, images or model for you to create outstanding and beautiful drawings. Okay, let's proceed. All right. Now, figure drawing is the most important type of drawing. An artist is always referred to as one because his figures or his figure representation with line is what is good. Now, if you have a very bad representation with lining, if you have not understand exactly how to curve your lines or the interpretations of line, then you cannot be regarded as an artist. So you see, when we define drawing as the use of what? Lines to create images. So your ability to use lines, if you cannot use the line, then if you're bad with using line, then you produce bad drawing. Now, life drawing requires different steps, but first and foremost, we all have to we all have different facial structures, bone structures, and ranges of body structures with different fat deposits, levels, high or flat chin, bone with lips form, the way our lips are formed, our hair color, hair lines, all these things put together makes us what we are. That is why no two persons look exactly the same way. Even some of our muscular structures, the way I'm built up, might be very different from the way you looking at me, you're built up. You might have a broader chest, you might be even bigger than I am, or better still, I can actually be bigger than you 10 times. That's placed by the side. That is exactly some of the things you consider while drawing to make your drawing magical. Now, all this should be reflected when a model is studied in drawing. So whenever you're studying any model, you put all these we've just mentioned into consideration. All right. So now let me just explain some of the things I'm trying to say in the previous chapter. If you watch by your left, you see the face of the woman. Now, she's, how the measurement was taken. You see the invisible line splitting her face into two. I explained that before now, that if you take the exact of what you have here and place it to the right, it will give you the exact of what the lady's face. That is exactly what you are seeing on the diagram. Now the diagram explains the measurement of human, both the eye level, the head, and all that. In this, as we proceed in the class, I'm going to break that down so you understand how to measure the face for drawing, how many times the head goes in full for the body, and then we'll talk all that and break it down in parts. Now, if you look at your right, now you see the different posture. You see the face looking up, chin down, face front, sideways. All these are different posture at which you can actually create your image. And then if you look at the angle explains all that. Now, some of the angles, the head is up, the face is distorted, the nose is foreshortened, and all that. We're going to explain that, and then I'll explain some of these words I just used as we proceed in the class. All right. So now, the head is the standard for measurement in figure drawing. Now, what do I mean? We use the head to measure the entire body. Now, because the number of heads is used to determine the height of a human form according to their gender and age. Now we use the head. With the head measurement, I can know, okay, if you tell me it's a forehead measurement, somebody, or maybe I can say, okay, maybe that's a dwarf if it's an adult, or is a teenager, or is a child. So if you tell me it's 8 head measurement, I can tell, okay, that's a full-grown adult, because we use the head as the key measurement for drawing. Okay, I'm going to explain that as we proceed. Okay, a full-grown man with normal height is 8 head high. What do I mean? If you take your head and measure your head from here to here, it will count 8 times down to your toe. That is the full-grown man is measured 8 head high. While a full-grown woman covers 7.5, or most times some ladies are 8 head, depending on the height of the individual. While adolescents, like from 10 years to 14 years, covers 6 head to 5 head height in measurement. So bear that when you're drawing. So if I ask to draw, so you can just use your, to measure 8 equal measurement down, and that represents each of the heads. All right, so this is just a perfect example of what I'm trying to explain to you. If you see the section 1 explain the first head. From the head, that's the head. Section 2 from the neck down to the breast or to the chest. For the ladies, is from the neck to the nipple. That is exactly where the second head measures. And then the third one measure from the head, from the nipple down to the navel. The same thing for the ladies. It calls down below the navel, because below the navel, for the men it is above the navel. Like from the men, from above the navel down to their thigh. From the thigh to the nail down to the toe. You understand? So that is just the head, the measurement. The same thing applies to the lady. Now remember, I told us that the head, a full-grown man is 8 head or 7.5. While for a woman is 7 or 7.5. Most times, some of them are what? 8 head. Now a child of 6 or an infant of within 3 months are within 4 heads and 3 heads in height. That's for children. They're within 4 heads and 3 heads in height. All right, so this is just the full measurement from infant down to to a teenager of 12 years. Now if you watch for a baby, that's from 1 year to 3 years, they are just 4 head measurements. Their head down to their stomach, down to their nail, and then to their toe. So by the time they grow up to 3 years, they increase their measurement like that till they are 12 years. You understand? That is when they start recording about 6 head to 5 heads measurements. It looks very interesting. Okay, so now let's continue. Now the stages of human development have different bone structure, which are shown through height and width. So that is the stages. It has different bone structure. The bone structure of a baby is way different from the bone structure of a teenager, and is well different from a bone structure of a grown adult. So you need to observe all these things. These are the ways you can actually make your drawings magical. If you break any of those rules, I am sorry, you are going to create a very bad drawing. All right. So this is another free sketch, of a human being. Now, if you see the very first diagram on your left, that's a sketch of a man, that's the body of a man, and that's the middle one is the body of a woman. So if you watch, we use circles and lines to represent all that. Okay, so that's exactly what it entails. Now, the head can be easily structured within a square, and the square is divided symmetrically to determine the position of the eyes and the nose. Now, you see, if you get the head, you can break it down into square. Now, that will help you, determine the eye, the nose, how you position all these things, so that you don't draw things that are out of proportion. Now, the brow is between the top half part of the square, meaning that the forehead has taken up half of the upper part of the square, while the eyes and the nose will cover, the remaining portion of the square. Now, what do I mean? If you bring a square box, you divide it into two. Your forehead, the skull, take eventually half. Then from the eye down to the mouth, down to the chin, take the remaining part of the half. That's exactly what I'm trying to explain. That, okay, let me see. Beautiful. Now, if you look at the drawing, the diagram in front of you. Now, if you take the square box and then divide it into two, this line that you're seeing here now, you divide it into two. If you watch, the forehead collected eventually half of the whole thing. And then from the eye, which is your eyebrow, your eyebrow, now took the other half down to your mouth, down to your chin. That's what took the other half. So when you rule this square box, you just split it into two. Just know that, okay, this is where your eye goes. The nose will take its quarter, and then the mouth, and then you have a well-proportioned drawing. All right. As for the children, their forehead takes up more than half part of the square, being used to measure the height of the head. As one gets older, gradually, the forehead gradually loses up or closes up within the square to the mature level of the half measurement. Now, that is little wonder if they give birth to a child, you see, they usually have big head. You understand? Their heads are usually big. So then the body is kind of small, you understand? So, but as they grow, the body starts expanding, and then the head starts reducing, the skull starts reducing, not really reducing, start growing in line with the entire body to give you a normal proportional body. But in a case where the head grows together with the body, automatically you have this, it's a disease, it's a sickness, so it's not normal. So it should be tamed, it should be taken care of. So whenever, you notice that, just know that this person is really abnormal. So it needs a medical attention and all that. But that's by the way. So in the course of this study, we are concentrating. That is why you just have to study everything about drawing, because it helps you understand proportion and then balance. So that when you're drawing, you know how to apply this thing. But that does not really mean we don't have what we call abstract drawing. Now, in abstract drawing or caricature, like you've seen some of the cartoons, you see where they draw, for example, the president, the big head, small body and small leg in a newspaper, the same thing, to just, to caricature or to cajole or to show, to interpret what exactly the artist has in mind. All right. So now that is that with that. All right, let's look at the head of a baby. Like I told us that the forehead of the baby take eventually more than half of the entire head before every other thing now comes below. It looks very interesting. So that is exactly what the head of a baby looks like. All right. When the head is tilted up backward, the head becomes foreshortened. Now, what do I mean? If the head is tilted backward, it becomes foreshortened. Now, what is foreshortening? Foreshortening is the act of drawing an object that is stretched. So if you tilt your head backward, automatically you've stretched the neck, so the head becomes foreshortened. So that is exactly what that entails. So foreshortening, now when you tilt your head back, you foreshorten the head. Now the nose is also shortened, and then the curves of the mouth runs downward. Now the chin is more square in form when the head is face downward or dropped downward. Now generally the body of a human being is made up of curves and wavy lines. So whenever you're drawing a human being, just know it's made up of curves and wavy lines, less of the structural lines. We use more of the rhythmic lines to draw the human body. All right, so let's proceed. Okay. So this is exactly what I'm trying to explain. Now, if you see, the head is foreshortened, it's straight. The nose is shortened too, as a matter of fact, which the nose is supposed to be seen long. The nose is elongated as against this very one down and this very one up here. But the middle one, the nose is shortened. because the head is tinted backward. And then if it is tinted downward, the forehead becomes bigger, and then every other thing becomes what? Shortened, as against when it is facing you direct. So all these postures are some of the postures I will advise for you to make your drawings look magical. You just need to practice all these over and over again to come up with what? A perfect sketch. All right, now let's look at the anatomy of a human body. Now, what are the anatomy of a human body in drawing? Now, the head or the human body is measured through the number of head that makes up his or her what? Height. An adult is made up of 7 to 8 heads if the human body is measured downward. So it's made up of 7 to 8 head. I've explained that. Now, the first segment represents the head. The second segment ends at the point of the nipple that I've explained. Now, the third segment ends at the navel. That is for the human anatomy. When you're measuring them, you just know the first segment is the head, the second segment is the nipple, the third segment is the navel. All right. Now, this is just an image that represents all that. If you see, the first head is the head, the second represents the nipple, just like that. The navel comes down to the thigh, and then it goes down to the toe. So if you count the head, let's count together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and what? 8. This is the full measurement of what? A human body, a full-grown man. The same thing applies to the woman. Okay. All right, so let's continue. And then the fourth head ends at the end of the buttocks. Now the fifth head brings up to the middle of what? The thigh. That is, it begins down to the middle of the thigh. Now the sixth head ends at the spot below the knee. The seventh head ends around the calf. The eighth head ends at the heel. Now generally for men, the normal height is 8 head. While for women, the normal height is 7 heads rather. So that is the normal height of a man, who goes 8 head times. For normal height for a woman, goes 7 heads into the drawing. I want to show us this image so that we'll see exactly what that means. Now you see, each segment represents the head. Each segment represents the head. If you roll this to this way, you just see everything represents each one down to the toe or right or to the heel. Okay, now let's continue. Now, points to note in figure drawing. What are the points to note when drawing the figure drawing? Now, when both hands are outstretched sideways, it is equal to the height of the full body. What am I trying to say? If I should spread my hands, I can't spread my hands. Now, if I should spread my hands, now if you measure from here to this side, it will give you the full height of what? The very person that you're drawing. Now, the waist is wider than the head. Normally, your waist is wider than the head. These are the points to note while drawing. You cannot draw a waist very small as against the head. Now, the wrist is a bit below the crotch. The same thing, the elbow is almost in line with the navel. So your elbow is almost in line with your navel. If you measure that, you will notice that. Now, the head runs through the body. It runs, that is, the head runs 8 times through the body. All right. Now let's look at the difference between male and female forms. What are the difference between a man and a woman? What are the difference between the both of them? Now let's consider some of those things. Number 1, the male body is made up of muscles, while fatty flesh cover most muscles of what? The women. You see them, that's why we say they are soft. They are soft. They don't have muscle. They have flesh and fat. So that's why even the Bible calls them weaker vessels, but that does not really mean they are weak. Because there is strongness in weakness. So now fatty flesh covers the female body, while the male are covered with what? Muscles. Little wonder we call ourselves macho man. 7 packs, 6 packs. All right. The woman has wider hips. Men hips are what? Narrow. You see them figure 8. We call them figure 8. They have this wider hips. While the men hips are quite narrow. You see a man's trousers are very sharp, but a woman's trouser looks like an 8, like the down part of the 8. You understand? It has this fish curve. Very interesting. All right. So the women's buttock protrude backward than the man's buttocks because the female pelvics and their scrotum are set backward. Their sacrum rather are set what? Backward, as against the man's buttocks. Now what am I trying to say? They have projected buttocks. as against the men that have the flat buttock. So these are the difference between the male and the female figure. But however, there are still other differences I want us to consider. Now the men have square shoulders, while female shoulders are slopey. Men have square shoulders, are very square, flat, while the female has what? Slopey shoulders or narrow shoulders. Now the men have broad, flat chests. Our chests are usually broad and flat, while the female has narrow chest with fleshy projection known as the breast. So they have breast, the male does not have breast, we have the flat but broader chest. All right. Now the women navel or navel is below their waistline, while the man's navel is above or within his waistline. If you check the female navel, it is usually most times above the waistline, while for the male navels, it is what? Below the waistline. So these are some of the difference between the male figure and the female figure. Now, if you understand all this and then you apply them in your drawings, you are going to create a magical drawing. No two ways about it. So how do my drawing get magical? Understand this precept, understand this concept, and then your drawings will be what? Magical. Now, there are room for distortions. Nobody is disputing that fact. There are rooms where you distort. But as it stands now, for you to get, now you first of all understand the law before you break the law. Because you cannot break a law that you don't understand. If you try it, you get arrested, you get jailed. Okay, that's by the way. So these are some of the differences. In case in your exams they ask you, give 5 differences of a male figure and 6 differences of a female figure. That won't take you 2 seconds. You answer those questions and then you fly to the next one. All right. So now let's still continue and then see some of the differences. Now women have round stomach, while men have flat muscular stomach, known as what? The 6 packs. You know, our stomachs are usually flat and muscular, 6 packs. Now, men has angular jaw, while female have round, almost pointed what? Jaw. Our jaw are usually what? Angular, but for the female, they have round, almost pointed what? Jaw. Men have thicker neck, while the female have slimmer necks. So our necks are usually big most times. You see us, you know, wider neck as against the female, but that does not really mean that some men has wider neck. There are some men that has, you know, very narrow and tiny neck as against some other women. It is peculiar. But however, randomly, if you want to check the standard measurement of a man, they have wider neck as against the women. Now, some other things you are going to check again now is that men's feet are always bigger than women's feet. Our feet, my shoe cannot be as the same as that of my wife. My wife cannot wear my shoe. It will definitely be an oversize. My mom cannot wear my dad's shoe. It is like that. You as a younger brother, if you check your shoe or your shoe size is way bigger than your elder sister's shoe. It is normal. So the leg, the feet of a man is usually is bigger than what, and even wider than what, the female's feet. That is how God created it. It is not our making. But yet, that does not mean that there are not, we have some other peculiar cases where some women has bigger feet as against the men. I've seen some ladies with very big feet, you know, as against the man. All right. So men have narrow thigh, while women has fatty thigh. There is no way a man will compare his laps or his thigh with a woman's laps. No, they usually have bigger thigh, you know, fatter thigh as against the men. Yet, vice versa, there are some men that has fat, you know, obese thighs, way bigger than women, and there are some women that has narrow thigh as against the men. So it's vice versa. But for a standard measurement, you just have to put this at the back of your mind that women's thigh is usually bigger, narrow, and bigger and fatty than that of what? The men's thigh. All right, so let's look at the future of children's body. Some of the futures of children's body. Now, the body of a baby is about 4 heads high. You know that. Now, the baby is full of more round curved lines. If you see babies, and that's why some of them, I saw a picture of a baby's hand, it looks like bread. You know, this bread, about 4 different steps. Very interesting. So that is, you see a lot of curves in their hand. You see them, they are foldy, their neck. They don't even, some of them don't even have neck. You know, they are just this so chubby and looking very interesting. So that is that for the baby. Now, baby's forehead is prominent since the forehead is what covering more than half part of what the entire head. Their forehead is usually very big, with their funny eyes and then interesting nose with beautiful mouth, small face, big head, something. You know, those creatures are just looking, but that's how God created them though. So, but with time, they start stretching. You know, the bones start expanding and then stretching. The neck starts coming out, and then those folds start, you know, dragging up to form a normal human body. Okay, so now let's look at the future of old people. Now, old people look emaciated. That's one of the future. Now, they stoop due to weak spine. Now, their eye socket or their eyes sink into the what? Into the socket. Like, because of the emaciation, you know, because how they started reducing, their eyes just sink into the socket. Now, they have flat or narrow cheek. They have flat or narrow cheek. Bony projection of what? Their collarbone. This their collarbone will now project out, you know, comes out very loud, and then they lose hair on their head rapidly. Their hair start falling off, you know. So these are some of the features of what? The old person. Their skin becomes wrinkled. Their skin becomes very, very wrinkled. So these are the future of an old or the old people. All right. So now in summary, today we looked at the types of drawing. We looked at the different types of drawing. We looked at drawing of human figure. Look at the drawing of the human anatomy and the points to note in figure drawing. Look at the difference between the male and the female drawing and female forms. We also look at the features of children. And finally, we talked about the features of old people. Now, that is beautiful having you around. But before we go, let's see some Q&A and then try our hands in some of those questions. Now, let me ask you some few simple questions I want you to, you know, give me an answer to. First, I want you to list 5 types of drawing. Then number 2, you explain the anatomy of human body in drawing. And then finally, I want you to try the difference between the male and the female figure. Try those things and then give me the answer. I know I killed it. I gave us a lot of examples and I explained it to exes, and then I want you to answer those questions and then mark it for yourself. Don't cheat. Anyone you're not comfortable with or you're not very familiar with, go back to the video and see the video again. All right, so now let's go into our exam guide and then try our hands in some questions. All right, so normal way we're in the exam guide. I want to believe by now you're familiar with the interface. The subject is cultural and creative art. You know, random question. I'm answering 40 questions and then you click, let's get started. All right, okay, now I want us to see question number 2. Let's see what we have here. Question number 2. Okay, no, let's try question. Now, which of the following drawing does not belong to this group? Which of the following drawing does not belong to this group? Now, imaginative composition, landscape, life drawing, and perspective. Then we have seascape. Perspective does not belong to that group. So you should know that the answer is D. Let's see question number 5. The surface quality of an object is known as dash. The surface quality of an object. What is the surface quality of an object? What is it all about? Is it contrast? Is it line? Is it shape? Is it texture? Is it tone? And you should know that the answer is what? Texture. That's the surface quality, the touch effect of a surface. So let's try another question. Good. Question number, let's see question number 9. An effect of depth can be created in a drawing by what? Is it by shaping? Is it by sketching? Is it by texturing? Is it by tracing? Or is it by shading? Yes, give me a try. All right, I think shading gives you the good answer. And then finally, our last question for today. Let's try the last question, which is question number 40. It said, imaginative composition means dash drawing. Is it figure drawing? Is it memory drawing? Is it nature drawing? Is it nude drawing? Or is it still life drawing? I mentioned the different types of drawing and I defined some of them. And then imaginative drawing is drawing from the memory. So it's memory drawing. Thank you for participating in today's class. You can practice more questions using the exam guide. Now the app scores and give a detailed explanation of all the questions at the end of your practice test. Now you can learn a particular topic of interest with different modes like study mode, mock mode, and practice mode. It also have other features that make learning fun. Now it is a must-have for all serious students.
Download the app from www.examguide.com if you don't have it yet. See you in the next class. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and then share this video to anyone you know that would benefit from it. Thank you, and bye-bye.